2, 1.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Francis Donald, and I'd like to welcome you to this 20th session in an ongoing series of webinars on sacred number and geometry. The first 19 sessions are available on makara.us. If you'd like to jot down the link, it will be on your screen for the next few slides. If you have any questions about the GoToMeeting interface, feel free to text BL. If you want to, if you'd like to add your name to the list of readers or volunteer to read, and we strongly encourage that you do this, please raise your hand, and the more readers, the better. Okay. We spent the last webinar exploring the number 6 and the swastika. Okay, hang on just a sec. All right. Today, we'll start our survey of the number 7, including an analysis of a figure called the Web of Athena. To better understand the geometric figure attributed to her, let's take a look at Athena herself, the goddess or netter, as they were called in ancient Egypt, that embodies the essence of the number 7. It's important to keep in mind that esoterically, the ancient gods and goddesses were not seen as personalities, but as principles whose functionality demonstrated and still demonstrates through number. One way to gain a glimpse of that functionality is to study the numbers related to the name or names of the deity. As I'm sure you're aware, Athena sprang as a fully realized being from the head of Zeus. Thus, as described by Plato, esoterically she represents nu, or mind. As a netter and exemplar of the higher mental plane, all aspects of Athena's expression originate beyond the lower quaternary. This is the esoteric definition of virgin, obviously a more profound state of consciousness than a mere lack of sexual experience. Virginity is an attribute also ascribed to the number 7, for unlike the 6 numbers preceding and the 3 following it, 7 cannot be birthed through the womb of the vesica piscis, demonstrated by the fact that a regular heptagon cannot be constructed using only a compass and straight edge. It comes as no surprise then that Athena's Greek name adds to 777. Interestingly, this is also the number attributed to Sanat Kumara, certainly a more heavenly father than Zeus. DK tells us why. And let's have a reader for this.
Michael, please let me unmute you. There you go.
Each heavenly man has his number, and the number of our heavenly man lies hid in the above 3 figures, 777. Just as 666 and 888 holds the mystery hid of 2 other heavenly men. This number, 777, is also the number of transmutation, which is the fundamental work of all the heavenly men. The basic work of man is accumulation and acquisition, or the acquiring of that which must later be transmuted. The work of transmutation, or the true cycle of 777, commences on the probationary path, and is definitely the activity of a heavenly man being realized and responded to by the cells in his body.
Thank you, Michael. So, we could hypothesize that since 777 is one of the numerical forces behind transmutation, Athena is also an exemplar of this transmutative force. Considering the fact that they both wield the potency of 777, we might even hypothesize that Athena, who was Neith in ancient Egypt, is fully aligned with the purpose of the Logos, and is thus an embodiment of and agent for Sanat Kumara's will to manifest. In fact, as Sophia, which means wisdom, the divine feminine was recognized as the force behind all manifestation, until Christianity buried the feminine under the euphemism Holy Ghost. Can we get a reader for this section? This is from the Secret Doctrine.
Nancy, please go ahead.
The Gnostic Sophia, wisdom, the mother of the Agdod, is the Holy Ghost and the creator of all, as in the ancient systems. The Father is a far later invention. The earliest manifested Logos was female everywhere, the mother of the 7 planetary powers.
Thank you, Nancy. Of course, there are many goddesses with varying purposes. However, the numbers attributed to Athena, as well as her recorded mythology, especially the circumstances surrounding her birth, suggest that Athena's specific purpose is to facilitate entrance into and passage through the higher mental plane. In fact, when emulated by the aspirant, her emergence from the head of her father could be seen as symbolizing a spiritual rebirth onto the higher mental plane, an event that Theosophy tells us occurs at the culminating stages in the, quote, true cycle of 777. Athena's epithet was Pallas, which means maiden. In the original Greek, the numerical value of Pallas is 343, which is 7 times 7 times 7. 343 has a particularly important meaning in Theosophy, for not only is it the number of incarnated planetary logi in the Earth scheme and the number of subplanes in the 7 cosmic planes, it also represents the phenomenon of the 4th subplane with the 3 subplanes above and 3 below. Can we get a reader for this section from TCF?
Yeah, Trudy, please go ahead.
I need to unmute.
Yes, you're unmuted.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me? Just as each plane has its 7 subplanes, so likewise each subplane can be subdivided, thus making 49 fires on every plane, or the 343 fires of the solar system. Herein can be found.
Whoop, we lost you, Trudy. I don't know what just happened. Why don't we move to another reader?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay, we got you back.
Got me back?
And
Oh. Herein can be found the clue to the mystery of the fourth.
we lost you again.
We lost you again. Let's pick another reader.
Okay. Walter, will you?
Sorry, Trudy. When we figure this out, when you figure out your system there, we can get you back on. Walter, is that who you said?
Yes.
Yes. Should I start from the beginning or
Yes,
from
would
the
you please?
here end?
I think start from the beginning. It's a little bit confusing.
Okay. Just as each plane has its 7 subplanes, so likewise each subplane can be subdivided, thus making 49 fires on every plane, or 343 fires of the solar system. Herein can be found the clue to the mystery of the 4th between the 3, which has at times bewildered students of the occult records. There are several ways of reading these figures 343, but the only occult method which has been hinted at here lies in the recognition of the three higher planes, the three lower planes, the fourth plane of meeting between them. This fourth plane has occultly been called the meeting place.
Thank you, Walter. Well done. So this meeting place is the threshold of higher mind, leading into the head of Zeus, if you will, and thus the provenance of Pallas, 7 times 7 times 7, which also is 343, and therefore representing that particular place in the cosmic physical plane. Pallas Athena, Athena being 777. So you see how the numbers are lining up here. We often think of 7 as representing the highest when counting up. You can see the top subplane there is offset from the others. The lowest when counting down, or the sum total. 343 suggests another aspect of 7, that of the midway point. The letters of Athena's title Parthenos, which means virgin, add to 515. Now, the angle of the slope of the Great Pyramid of Giza is 51.5, as mentioned in earlier webinars. At this angle, and only at this angle, the height of a pyramid becomes the radius of a circle whose perimeter is equal to the length of its 4 sides, a phenomenon called squaring the circle, though philosophically a better term might be circling the square. We could say that through the functional aspect of the netter, who in Egypt was known as Neith and in Greece as Pallas Athena, the circle of spirit and the square of matter meet on the 4th subplane of the mental plane. By the way, the name Neith adds to 56, which is numerologically closely related to 515. DK says, we have therefore our lower 4, our higher 3, and the relation between them, the principle of mind. This alignment of square and circle is the purpose of every temple, embodied in the name of the Parthenon through the 515 of Parthenos, and in the shape or slope, 51.5 degrees, of the Great Pyramid. 51.5 degrees is also very close to the angle associated with the 7-sided heptagon, which is 51.412857 degrees. This angle, which is 360 degrees divided by 7, is the only angle among the numbers 1 through 10 that, as divisors of 360, doesn't yield an even number, thus contributed to the association of 7 with the Virgin. In fact, the etymology of the word Athene means I come from myself, and the word Athenos, deathless or eternal. I think this concept of I come from myself is actually quite a bit more esoteric than coming from the head of the Father, though both shed some light on the nature of Athena. One aspect of the mystery of 7 is described, though not actually revealed, by 2 of its numerical qualities. First, 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6 times 7 equals 7 times 8 times 9 times 10. And when we leave out the 7 altogether, we get the same point of division. For 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 6 equals 8 times 9 times 10. Thus, though the cusp between 5 and 6 is the apparent or exoteric center of the decad, an argument could be made for 7 as being its esoteric center. 7 has a numerical signature that reveals itself when divided by any of the numbers of the decade. The signature always includes the sequence 142857, repeating in an endless cycle. The only difference between these divisors is where the sequence begins, thus revealing through a particular sequence a numerical quality of the number 7. Let's look at what DK calls the cycle of 777 incarnations. Can we get a reader for this short paragraph?
Iris, will you read for us, please?
Sure. In these 3 circles of petals of the egoic lotus lies concealed another clue to the mystery of the 777 incarnations. The figures do not convey an exact number of years, but are figurative and symbolical. They are intended to convey the thought of 3 cycles of varying duration, based upon the sepentary nature of the manifesting monad.
Thank you. Okay. This introduces the concept of numerical blinds and ciphers. As DK says, the septenary here used doesn't represent a literal 7, but rather a particular cycle of manifestation. The particular numbers of the cycle are determined by many factors, including individual effort. As a blind, decimal places or zeros are often truncated. For instance, in the 777 under consideration, the 700 could mean 7,000, 70,000, or even 7 million. Here's what HPB has to say on this subject. Could we get a reader for this? And by the way, the X that appears in this quote should be read as an X and not as a times or time sign. Can we get a reader, please?
Malia, can you please read this for us?
Surely.
Thank you.
Every figure must be 7x, 7 to the power of x, x varying according to the nature of the cycle in the subjective or real world. And every figure or number relating to or representing all the different cycles from the greatest to the smallest in the objective or unreal world must necessarily be multiples of 7. The key to this cannot be given, for herein lies the mystery of esoteric calculations, excuse me, and for the purposes of ordinary calculation, it has no sense. The number 7, says the Kabbalah, is the great number of the divine mysteries.
Thank you, Malia. Now, let's see what DK has to say about the outer circle, or 700 incarnations. That's the first period in the 777. Will you get a reader for this section?
Scott, please go ahead.
First, the 700 incarnations. These concern the unfoldment of the outer circle. This is the longest period. The initial vibration is slow and heavy, and millennia of lives have to elapse before the interchange of energy between the ego and its reflection, personal self, the lower threefold man, is such that the consciousness of the man occultly awakens in the hall of learning. For advanced man at this time, these incarnations took place upon the moon chain, and in some cases upon certain planets connected with the inner round.
Thanks, Scott. So these millennia of lives take place in the, quote, dark and gloomy corridors of the halls of ignorance. The number 70 tells us that the next group of incarnations, the 70, is 10 times shorter. But again, this cycle may be 100 or even 1,000 times shorter. Or the X, as in 7X, may even be other than a 0. We're going to need 2 readers for this section on the on this phase. Let me pull it up here. Here we go.
Okay, let's.
So if you choose 2 readers in a row, and then we'll just switch
Okay, can we kill two birds with one stone and do Martha and Gabriella?
Hey, perfect.
Okay. Please, just talk out. The 70 incarnations. These concern the unfoldment of the middle circle of petals in the egoic lotus. Much may be learned from a consideration of the occult significance involved in the sending out of their followers by any initiate, such as the Christ, in groups of 70, going 2 and 2. These 70 incarnations primarily affect the development of love in the personal life, the evolution of the astral nature based on the recognition of the pairs of opposites, and their equilibrizing in love and service.
This cycle covers the period passed by the man in the Hall of Learning and has its correspondence in the Atlantean root race and its conflict between the Lords of the Dark Face and the Brotherhood of Light. Within the life of each individual, a similar conflict wages during this period, ending with the final Kurukshetra, or battleground, which earns for the man the right to tread the probationary path, and eventually the privilege to stand before the portal of initiation.
Thank you both. So the reason that these 70 incarnations concern themselves with, quote, the development of love in the personal life is because the middle tier of petals of the egoic lotus, the love petals, conditions this cycle of 70 incarnations. Notice, too, that the 70 incarnations concern the evolution of the astral nature, a preparation culminating in the second initiation. Okay, finally we come to the final 7 lives in the 777. We get a reader for this section.
Scott, you want to go ahead again, please?
Sure. 7 incarnations. These are those passed upon the probationary path. The 2 outer rings of petals are stimulated in a new and special sense through the conscious act of the probationary disciple. Much of the work hitherto has been pursued under the ordinary laws of evolution and has been unconscious. Now all that changes as the mental body becomes active and 2 of the will petals are coordinated, and one awakens vitality, and unfolds.
Thanks, Scott. So if we look at this stage mythologically, we could say that the disciple comes under the influence of the netter of the mental plane. We'll need 2 readers to finish this quote.
Okay, let's go with Leah, please, and Lona. Can both of you guys read for us?
Yes, okay. The fire or energy from these 2 rings begins to circulate along the atomic triangle. And when this is the case, it marks a very momentous epoch. A dual work has been consummated in the personal lower life and in the egoic. When the inner circle of petals is awakened through the instrumentality of the curious and abnormal process of initiation, it produces the perfected man in the 3 worlds.
Thanks, Leah. And next reader, please.
Yes.
Lona, can you go ahead, please?
The relation of the 77 incarnations, a man passes through the door of initiation and enters upon a brief synthesizing process, or final period in which he garners the fruits of the experience in the 2 first worlds, and transmutes knowledge into wisdom, transforms the shadow of things seen into the energy of that which is, and achieves the final liberation from all the lower forms which seek to hold him prisoner. This period of initiation itself is divided into 7 stages, but only 5 of these concern the evolution of the ego.
Thank you, Lona. DK's phrase transforms the shadow of things seen into the energy of that which is reminds me of Plato's allegory of the cave from the Republic. So, after the cycle of 777, there's a, quote, brief synthesizing period that encompasses the 7 initiations. Brief, it may be noted, only in comparison to the millennia of lives that constitute the cycle of 777 incarnations. The final 7 stages, occurring after the cycle of 777, which represent final liberation, are overseen by Sanat Kumara, whose number, you'll remember, is, by no coincidence, 777. Okay. For reasons beyond our capacity to know, or as HPB says, the key cannot be given, the great organizing principle permeating the manifested universe is conditioned by the number 7. If a unit of consciousness exists in the realm of time and space, it is sevenfold. In fact, each aspect of its sevenfold nature is itself sevenfold. For instance, all beings, whether an atom of substance, a human being, or a planetary logos, have what DK calls a sevenfold inner economy, by which that unit of consciousness develops its 7 principles. And it does this on the 7 subplanes of the cosmic physical plane, which represent 7 grades of matter. These subplanes are imbued with 7 qualities of wisdom, each an expression of one of the 7 ray lords, whose physical forms are the 7 sacred planets. These ray lords each have 7 chakras, and each ray lord is one of the 7 chakras of the solar logos, itself part of a 7-fold cosmic entity dubbed the one about whom not may be said. Furthermore, each logos is expressive of a 7-fold electric fire, which are the 7 aspects of his will, called the 7 spirits before the throne of God. Each solar logos is also expressive of a 7-fold solar fire, the above-mentioned ray lords, as well as a 7-fold fire by friction that animates all within its ring pass knot through the 7 brothers of Fohat, which demonstrate as 7 levels of electrical phenomenon. DK tells us that these are the 7 Raja Lords, or Devas of the 7 planes. They are the 7 fires, or those 7 states of activity through which consciousness is expressing itself. Finally, each of the above listed 7s subdivides by 7, and those again by 7, giving us 7, 49, and 343 fractal iterations. For the lesser always carries the impress of the greater expression. Of course, we can't possibly study in any depth even one of these manifestations of 7. But in spite of HPB's injunction, we can ask the question, why 7? In fact, the whole purpose of me reading this was just to give you some sense of how ubiquitous this organizing principle of 7 is. What is it about the number 7 that gives it such an all-encompassing application? One answer might be that one answer is that its tiered structure of 3 lower, 1 midpoint, and 3 higher levels renders that structure inherently transmutative. Remember, in discussing the 777, DK tells us as much, that the transmutative quality is a part of that number. Also, 7 allows for separation of the 1 from the 6, 6 being the universal number of manifestation, and 1 as the Adi subplane holding the eternal principle of that which manifests. 6 and 1 also allows us to divide the visible physical plane from the invisible realms. For further insight as to why 7 is the ubiquitous organizing principle, let's look at the structure of the tree of life, which is made up of 10 Sephiroth, 3 of which stand in a causal relation to the other 7. These upper 3 Sephiroth have much in common with the unmanifest first, second, and third logi of Theosophy. The organization of 7 crowned by 3 allows for dual expression, 2 on each column or vertical line of each of the 3 fundamental principles, plus the earthly kingdom of Malkuth at the bottom. This is just one example of how 10, or 7 plus 3, often, if not always, forms the true totality, consisting of the 7 that occur in time and space, the 2 that initiate the synthesizing process, and the 1 final synthesis. This 7 becomes 10, applies to the realm of fire, planetary chains, planets, the vehicles employed by a human being, the centers in a human being, and the spirale in an atom. Okay, let's move into our analysis of the Web of Athena, which could also be called Athena's veil or the net of Neith. DK describes this stuff simply as its exoteric consideration, line, form, and color. At this point, we're not looking for meaning or significance, but rather for a tabulation of physical attributes. Please participate. When called on, briefly describe a single physical attribute. Your observations may seem to you obvious, like the ones listed here. That's fine. Any ideas that help us to physically define this figure are useful. Okay, I'll start. By the way, as others and I describe these attributes, consider preparing for the next step of our analysis by imagining the possible meaning and significance of the attribute. You may even want to jot down the ideas that occur to you in order to just share during the next segment of the analysis. Okay, the Web of Athena is a 7-sided heptagon with each of its 7 points connected to every other point in the heptagon. There are 6 connecting lines radiating from each point, making a total of 21 lines. Okay, any further observations? What other physical characteristics do you see? Any takers? DL, do we have any
Yes. Walter,
hands up?
go ahead. You're on self-mute. There you go.
Yes, there are in the Web of Athena 3 types of lines or 3 different distances represented by the red, blue, and green in the diagram.
Very good. Yes, indeed. Right. Anyone else? And those length of lines you'll see have very great significance once we get a little deeper into the figure.
Please go ahead, Yvonne.
The red, green, and blue, the first 3 rays, and the first ray would be I think the main one that connects the other points come from, all around the perimeter.
Interesting observation. That had not occurred to me. That there's a ray connection at all. Now, I didn't use these colors to represent rays, so that's not my thought. However, I think you're onto something. When we get into a description of these lines a little further on, we'll re-examine this idea of the rays connected with this figure. Anyone else? This is fascinating.
Yes, we have quite a few, but first let me say that Suzanne says all are triangles.
Well, it's not quite true. All could eventually be subdivided, but look at the very central figure. That's a heptagon, not a triangle. However, there's an overwhelming number of triangles. There's actually only a few figures that aren't. Anyone else?
Yes, several more. Please go ahead, Lona.
Yes, I'm talking about the green lines, and this is a seven-pointed star, and I can see that it can be drawn in one piece, as I say. You don't need to lift the hand from the paper. You can start at one point and end after drawing the star at the same point.
Very good observation. That's true.
The same way as we draw the five-pointed star, you can do that too.
Yeah, right. It's also true of the blue line, if you'll notice, that you can do it without lifting. Good observation. And next?
Okay, let me see. Helen says 14 equilateral triangles.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're not actually equilateral. The reason being that the degrees involved here are not 60 degrees. They look very close to equilateral, but the actual degree number is 51.4 degrees, and then the top angle is 77 on those triangles you're seeing. But it has a similar look to equilateral triangles. But actually the difference between these triangles and an equilateral triangle completely changes the quality of the net of Athena, as you will see as we get more into this. Next.
So yeah. I assume, hello, I assume I speak out the ultimate obvious. I couldn't find any 90-degree angle, and then I thought to myself, duh, why would you look for a 90-degree angle? Yes. But then I thought, if 4 may be a symbol for the number for materialization, or for being in dense matter, it may have something to do with what we look at is not really, let's say, home in the material plane. It may express itself there, but and if I thought that further, I can't find any known angle here that we know from our, let me call that simply day-to-day life.
Yes. Well, that's a really good observation, actually. There are no regular angles in this figure, none at all. There's not a single angle that is not a split of a degree. So if you're looking for that, you can stop now because, as you pointed out, there's nothing regular about this, except for within its own world. And it was also interesting observation about fourness and the physical plane. This 7 is not as materially oriented as the number 4 is. Well, I mean, we tend to think it is because we have the 7th subplane, right? But when you take 7 as a whole, it represents something quite different. Okay, next.
Please go ahead, Allison.
What I see is 3 different heptagons, one outlined by the red line with the point upwards, in the interior of the blue line with the point downwards, and then reversed again inside in the green line.
Outstanding. Yes, indeed. There are 3 heptagons. It's a little difficult to see in this figure when I get to some other representations of this figure. They're easier to see. Keen eye there. Yes, thank you. 3 heptagons. And everybody knows that a heptagon is a 7-sided figure.
Please
okay, next.
Vera, go ahead, please.
Yeah, there is no middle point here.
Yes, very good. Yeah, it's not indicated, is it? No line crosses through the middle. And that has something to do with the lack of regular shapes. in terms of the type of degrees involved.
Yeah.
Good point. Next.
Martin, please go ahead.
Yes, if you for each of the apexes of the red, if you combine the green and blue lines, each apex has 5 very irregular angles. There's a red to blue, blue to green, green to green,
Mm-hmm.
green to blue, blue to red, and it's 5 at every one of the apexes. That's just a numerical fact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. Yeah, there's 6 radiating lines from each apex, and they create or embrace 5 shapes, in their immediate vicinity. Good point.
And the blue, if you look at the top angle, the blue has the 2 blue lines that meet at the top angle have a green base, which creates, I don't know if that's an equilateral triangle, but it certainly looks close to one.
No, there's equilateral is 60 degrees, and as was just said, these triangles are actually.
How many degrees is at each of those angles? Do you know?
51.4, 51.4, and 77.1.
Is that a replication
change.
of the pyramid then? Does that replicate the pyramid angles there?
It's within 1/10 of 1 degree. And you probably won't find it surprising that I have a little presentation on that fact coming up.
Okay, I'll wait.
Good points. Thank you for that.
Walter, please go ahead.
Yes. In the Web of Athena, there is a 7 within the 7. In other words, if you look at the individual shapes formed by the lines, like pieces of a puzzle, they're the smallest pieces or shapes. There are 7 different types of shapes, ranging from the one heptagon in the middle to the various triangles and pentagons. And if you count the number of different types of shapes, there are 7.
Yeah, that's correct. There's 7 types of shapes, and there's 7 iterations of each shape, except for one notable exception. And we'll cover that soon. Thanks,
Yeah,
Walter.
and the 14 of the scalene triangles just above next to the outer edge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're saying there are 14 of those type scalene triangles.
Yes.
Within the figure, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. There's actually more than that, but there's 14 that have a regular symmetrical appearance. If you keep looking, you'll find more, though. Like 14 more. Okay, next.
Okay, we only have two more comments now. Murthy says, this is an odd figure and not fit in any way, I think.
And not what?
Not fit. It doesn't fit in any way that he thinks.
Oh, well, yes, it is an odd figure. In fact, the true meaning of the word odd is unique to 7, because as I mentioned earlier, of the numbers 1 through 10, 7 is the only one that is not divisible, and therefore it's unique and is very much the odd man out, except for it's more like the odd woman out, actually. The odd virgin out, if you will. Next.
Okay, another comment and then a couple more hands. From Martha and or Gabrielle, there are 2 7-pointed stars if you trace around the outer lines, 1 blue and 1 green.
Yes. Even though there's 3 heptads, or heptagons, I should say, there are only 2 of a certain type of 7-pointed star. But if you look more closely, you'll see there's actually a 3rd 7-pointed star as well. That'll come up soon. It's hard to see. It's hard to see these things because the lines are quite confusing to separate out. Any other comments?
Yes, a couple more here. Iris, please go ahead.
Yes, the blue heptagon is surrounded by 7 triangles with blue lines, and the green heptagon is surrounded by 7 triangles with green lines touching on the edges of the heptagon.
You mean touching on the edges of the inner or the outer heptagon?
The inner heptagon.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Those are the two that I think that Gabrielle and Martha were pointing out. Is those two stars? They're discrete. No, it's perfectly fine. And you know, one points up and one points down. So that's interesting to note. Thank you for that. Any other comments at all about the physical attributes of the Web of Athena?
Please go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, you have your 3 colors. If you look at the reds, they connect every point. The blues connect every other point. The greens connect every 3rd point. And that's all you can do, because if you go to connecting every 4th point, you're running the green heptagon backwards. And
that's right. And
5 runs the blue backwards, and 6 runs the red backwards. So there are only 3 choices.
That's right. It's literally every point is connected to every other point in the way that Scott just described. You know, it either is direct 1-to-1, or it skips 1, or it skips 2. That's all you've got. Good observation. Anyone else?
Nope, I think that's it. No more hands, no more.
Okay, well, it's enough material for us to work with, that's for sure. I commend you on your observations. Some I hadn't noticed when I was formulating this part of the of our analysis. So kudos. Okay. So great work. Thank you. Here's some additional physical attributes. Some of these you've brought forward. I present them again in order to share my illustrations with you. The Web of Athena is a closed figure with 49 interior spaces, as Walter was able to point out, though it's a lot easier when they're colored like it is here than when you're just looking at the whole figure. So 49 interior spaces made up of 7 types of shapes with 7 instances of each of these 7 types, all surrounding a 50th shape at the center, which of course has only 1 instance. 5 of these shapes types, 5 of these shape types are triangular. Somebody immediately saw, well, they're all triangles. That's because, you know, a great number of them are. 1 is 4-sided, 1 is 5-sided, and of course the central shape is 7-sided. There are 34 points of intersection within the figure. 41 if you include the 7 outer points. There are 3 horizontal lines dividing the figure into 3 segments. 2 of these segments are 4-sided, 1 is 3-sided. There are 14 interior lines, each of these lines is horizontal to one other line, making 7 pairs of horizontal lines. Though none of the 7 lines of the enclosing heptagon are parallel to each other, each is parallel to 2 of the interior lines. So we could say we have 7 sets of 3 parallel lines, another way of looking at it. Whereas connecting all the points of the pentagon produces a single star, and somebody pointed this out, connecting all the points of the heptagon produces 3 stars, each surrounding a central heptagon. Since it includes the inner star, the middle star could be considered a double star. 7 circles can be drawn within and around the figure. Like a five-pointed star, both stars can be drawn in a continuous motion. In fact, both stars can be drawn sequentially without lifting one's pencil. The 21 interior lines of the net create 7 large overlapping triangles with 2 angles of 51.4 plus degrees and one of 7.1 plus degree. This is just, the one shown here is just one of 7. You just rotate it around. You can see that there's 7 of these. But it's very confusing if I try to show this, because then the shape breaks into other shapes. There are 14 additional instances of this particular triangle, including the 7 small points of the interior 7-pointed star and the 7 larger points of the outer 7-pointed star. 7 of the 14 interior lines form 7 additional triangles with 2 angles of 77.1 plus degrees and 1 angle of 25.7 plus degrees. This is a point Walter was making. There are also 7 small discrete triangles, and here's the one I'm pointing out to you, Walter, 14 medium-sized overlapping triangles with this shape. That's the one in the darker color there. To avoid overlapping them, I'm showing you 6 here. There are 7 5-pointed stars surrounding the central heptagon. Of course, they're distorted 5-pointed stars. Since they overlap, I've only shown you 3 here. The angles of the lines of the outer heptagon are 128.5 plus degrees. The angles occurring within the figure are all increments of 25.7 plus degrees. And they are 25.7 plus, 51.4 plus, 77.1 plus, 102.8 plus, and 128.5 plus degrees. Those are just additions of the 25.7 plus degrees. Though there are no right angles in this image, as was pointed out, a cross can be inscribed using 4 of the intersected points. However, this cross does not mark the center of the figure. Nonetheless, it's easy enough to find the center by drawing lines from any 2 outer points to their opposing interior intersections. In both the outer stars, there are 3 points above and 4 points below the horizontal axes of the figure. The inner star has 4 points above and 3 below. Okay, there's actually even more that could be said about this, but in the interest of time, we're going to move on to our next segment. DK separates the next stage of our analysis into 2 parts as follows. Could we get a reader for these 2 phases?
Yvonne, will you please read for us?
Sure. A comprehension in the astral or emotional body of its quality, the reaction of the sensitive response to the impact of its qualitative nature. A conceptual consideration of its underlying idea, of what is intended to teach, of the intellectual meaning it is intended to convey.
Thank you. So in the interest of time, we'll consider these 2 steps together. When sharing, you're welcome to speak to either the emotional or conceptual aspects of the Web of Athena. So, considering the list of physical attributes, as well as those you have brought forth, and there are quite a few that aren't on this list, what quality, significance, and or meaning can we ascribe to the Web of Athena? Here's one example each based on quality and significance and on conceptual meaning. In terms of significance, when I look at the Web of Athena, the 2 stars evoke a sense of both inner and outer radiance. In terms of conceptual meaning, the idea of a web or net is suggested by the continuous woven motion by which the two stars can be drawn. Okay, further ideas on the quality, significance, and/or meaning of the Web of Athena. As you think about this, you may wish to consider our list of physical attributes. I'll give you a minute to review. Just raise your hand when you're ready. BL, do we have any takers?
Not yet, we don't.
Yeah, well, this
There we go.
takes
There we
some.
go. Please go ahead, Walter.
Yes, the Web of Athena communicates the concept of as within, so without, very similar to the concept of the inner and outer stars. There's the star that's formed by the indigo, the seven-pointed star, and that last scene there, the dark blue outer stars, and then there's a congruent star just like it that was the blue-gray, which is identical to it but smaller. And so the Web of Athena really brings forth that concept of the seven containing seven within it.
Yeah, you know, as instead of as above, so below, we have as within, so without. That's a very good point, Walter. Thanks for that. Yeah, okay, I've gone on to my first one here because I want to show you this illustration in order to derive your thoughts on this. Any others? Any other ideas about the significance or meaning of the web?
Please go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, there's nothing rational about this. This confounds and does in the rational mind. Other figures are rational. They divide into 360. 7 doesn't. So every figure here is dealing with angles that are irrational or transrational. And it lifts you, it forces you into a higher mind, out of a rational mind into a higher mind understanding. That's the push here. That's its source.
That's really a great observation. It acts almost like a mandala in the sense that you could meditate on in order to shift your consciousness out of the rational, which is, you know, akin to lower mind, into the super-rational, trans-rational, or what mathematicians call irrational, or higher mind. Very much like trans-rational numbers do this. And in fact, you find that there are trans-rational numbers involved in this. It's a very good point. I find that of all the figures we've looked at so far, that this is the most transporting in that way. Other thoughts about the significance and or conceptual meaning of this figure?
Please go ahead, Allison.
The inversion of the stars and the heptagons within remind me of flipping the wheel, reversing the wheel on, esoteric astrology. The 3 levels.
Yeah, that's true. You have, and it's interesting how you automatically have a reversal between the star and the heptagon that lies at the center of the star, don't you? For instance, if you look at the blue and green, we have an upright star with an inverted heptagon within it. And the central figure is the same way, except for it's just the opposite. The heptagon is upright, and the star is reversed. So you have a double reversal there, right?
Well, three levels, really.
3 levels. And the third level? You're saying 3 levels?
Right. The outer heptagon would be the first level. The inner heptagon reversed would be the second level, and the third heptagon in the middle would be
yet another.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so,
Right.
I mean, if you're thinking of like the points, if you're going from point to point, the direction reverses within each time. So it just reminds me of esoteric astrology where the wheel reverses within each level that you reach.
Yeah, and that those reversals continue. It's not just one reversal, at least in this figure, which is interesting. I might point out here that the star with the yellow points, which shares a common center with the inner star, has both an upright points and an upright heptagon. It's just an interesting feature. Okay, any other comments?
Please go ahead,
Significance and meaning.
Yes, I think that the uprightness and then the pointing down and the pointing up, there's a direction up and the direction down. That's the three above and the three below. And the meeting place is a meeting place of direction. In other words, all seven planes ascend upward, all seven planes ascend downward, and that meeting of upwardness and downwardness is the center, which is the four, and there's a kind of a combination here. Buddhi, in other words, is the meeting place of two directions, an ascent, a descent into matter and an ascent out of matter, and the balance and equilibrium that was being mentioned regarding the reversal of the wheel the reversal occurs when there's an equilibrium between that which descends and that which ascends, and the meeting place is in four. And four is the middle ether, the distributing ether, whether the cosmic ether or the physical ether, and we, humanity, the fourth kingdom, the fourth hierarchy, are that equilibrizing meeting point where that which is above and that which is below, and that direction which goes in and that direction which goes out meet in man, in the planetary man, in the heavenly man, on and on.
Well, brilliantly said, and thank you for that. And that's also has a lot to do with the relevance of the Parthenos, which is, if you remember the term Parthenos, which means virgin, which has to do with the sevenness, is adds to 343, and we spent some time on that segment, which accentuates what you're talking about, the middle principle, as opposed to normally when we think of seven, we think of the high seven, the seventh up or the seventh down, but it is very much concerned with the middle principle, and this is in that fascinating way that happens with number. It's inherent in its number, because 777, 7 times 7 times 7, that is, equals 343. So, which points to that inner principle. Naxos, and thanks for bringing in the concept of the fourth as a human kingdom in this particular place. It makes relevant this figure specifically to the human kingdom.
In the numerology of the word Shambhala, DK mentions 7 as the number of man. He calls other numbers the number of man, but in the numeration of the letters Shambhala, 7 is the number of man, and man is the mediator. So there's a relationship between 7 relates to the human and to man just as 4 does, and understanding that relationship is a mystery.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah,
because
I'll look at that.
He says the planetary logos, basically, 7th principle of the logos is on the 4th plane, and the 7th principle is the place for physical demonstration. So the meeting place and the anchoring place have a commonality. But anyway, we'll get into it another time.
Yeah, but it's entirely relevant to this. This is not a 7th subplane or 7th plane kind of figure. It's much more about the midway point. I mean, just to look at it without any understanding of the philosophy would indicate that. It's a centralized figure. Thank you so much, Mark.
Just one more point.
Yeah, that's fine, yes.
The inner radiance and the outer radiance, when you say those words, and I heard those words, then I think of the cosmic ethers, which is a 4, and the physical ethers, which is a 4. And so that which one of those is inner and which one is outer, I won't go into, but a cosmic ether and a physical ether, and that 4-ness, and this idea of that which is above and that which is below and that which is inner and that which is outer are all implicate, kind of, it's like the implicate radiance of the whole thing.
Yes. Thanks, Mark.
Right.
Much appreciated. Anyone else?
Yes, we have quite a few here, but I'd like to make a comment first, okay?
Great.
I'd like to comment myself. The term the Web of Athena, which your image was, that just brings to mind how complex the mind is, and how it has all of those intricacies to it. And then the way you've done these images so we can see that, we can actually see now the complexity of the chambers. And how special and unique it is based on the angles and the difference of the figures that are in here. And then again, that also goes along with what Scott was talking about, how it takes the concrete mind and forces us to think more in terms of the abstract mind. So I'm just putting together all the little pieces in my own mind. And I think that the images, as usual, they really illustrate for us just how complex this really is.
Well, as we move into more complex figures, and of course that naturally happens as we go up, through the numbers, this becomes a more important aspect of the presentation, because the simpler figures are, just easier to see point blanks, but the Web of Athena hides as much as it reveals, and you really have to have the patience. I worked with this for a couple of weeks before I saw certain qualities and aspects that just jumped out. There was a lot of aha in this, in putting together this. Well, thank you, BL. Anyone else?
Yes, we have quite a few comments here. Helen says the image appears to move from static, the heptagon, to radiating, the star.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's this whole idea of static versus movement is particularly applicable to this figure. Another term for static. Static has a certain pejorative, even though it's not inherent in the word, but there's some pejorative about it. But another word is balanced, that when you have balanced elements, then it has what's called a static quality. But for instance, let me go back here a couple of images. Where is it? It's moving very slowly for some reason. Oh goodness, have we gone into a rabbit hole? It's not that far back, I'm sure. Oh, jeez. There we go. Okay. See, if you highlight, one more. If you highlight certain elements and and then you sort of don't emphasize others, you can create dynamism. But even there, notice that it's not possible to create a regular sense of the movement like you have in a swastika around the figure. It just, it's because of the sevenness, you have a different aspect with that. For instance, I wasn't able to create more than 6 of the of the darker colored figures without having one that would overlap, right? Anyway, let's get back to this. Where we were. Anybody else?
Yes, I'll get to you in a minute here, Scott. I don't want you to think I've forgotten you. Malia says, I am reminded of Jesus' injunction to forgive 7 times 70 times.
Oh, I don't know that. 7 times 70. Is that what he said? Here, so interesting. 490 times. Interesting. Okay, so here we're back to where we were.
Francis, I'm remembering from long ago Bible studies, but with the idea that, you know, you don't just forgive once, you forgive, and he used multiples of 7s.
Yeah, interesting.
Translated.
Well, you know, one of the things about 7, it's the first number that can be called a completion. I mean, 3 is its own type of completion, and of course, we have unity in 1. But the 7 is a natural, and the first natural cycle of completion, as in days of the week, for instance.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, any other thoughts?
Yes, several more. Go ahead, please, Scott.
Yeah, heretofore, all of the irrational numbers that we've dealt with have been found within the forms of the numbers and of their forms. The square root of 2, the square root of 3, even pi is found within the forms of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Right.
And as we skip 8, 9, and 10, they're all within those forms. This one, and this one alone, is made up of that. It is irrational.
Inherently.
Inherently. And it's the only one that is.
Yeah.
The other one that is like it is the circle itself, and that's Zeus. And this is Venus, Athena rather, born from the mind of Zeus. It's irrational from irrational. And
that's
it stands alone.
Yeah. A terrific observation. Yeah, I like that idea that everything we've looked at, well, all the other numbers in the decad, there are irrational numbers that can be derived from the figures that can be formed from those numbers. But as Scott mentioned, here the irrationality is inherent in the number itself.
And that's
in the figure itself. What's that?
And it's a living function. The irrationals are the living functions, and the others are simply the forms. The irrational numbers being functions, living principles, the gods themselves. This is a god in form. It's the one that is a god. Is it not? Is there any other one in the decad, in the tetractys, that is a god or goddess in and of itself? It's Athena.
Only the circle, as you say. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I see what you mean. Yeah. Yeah. You have Zeus, or the one immutable, unknowable in the circle, and then you're right. You come all the way to this before it's revealed again that way. Just right in the potency of the transrational quality of the numbers involved. It's a dynamite point. I much appreciate it. I hadn't thought of it directly in that way. Okay, who's next? We got to keep moving here.
Okay, we got a couple of more comments, and then I'll go to Era. Anne says the movement is 3-dimensional.
Okay.
And Malia says implicit in all you were saying is the mystery of the feminine.
Yeah, there is. It's interesting, 7, because we think of feminine as even numbers, but there is nothing more feminine than this iteration of 7, this particular Web of Athena. You're looking at the mystery of that quality beyond sexuality, which is the feminine. Yeah. It's Sophia, is the ultimate feminine quality, that which is capable of manifesting the principle of or the will of the logos, As Scott said, you have the circle, then you have this, you have Zeus or Sanat Kumara, and then you have the daughter or the Shakti or the mother, that is, as HPP says, all manifesting deities are feminine, in the old way, in the old religion. Okay, anyone else?
Yes, Era had his hand up. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a far fetch, but I had this glimpse of when you spoke about forgiveness and forgiving 7 times. I thought something along the lines of going through the 7 principles and going through the 7 times as the 7 vehicles in whatever scale you're thinking here, and redeeming those, aka forgiveness, may bring you back home or something along those lines. As I said, it's a raw thought. It's just kind of a glimpse, but I thought maybe it could be interesting.
It's useful, yeah. That gets back to the idea of using this figure as a mandala. I chose the colors somewhat carefully. It's always a movable feast, but the idea is that it can directly stimulate your consciousness, and of course, meditation is a form of cleansing, and cleansing your vehicles or principles. This would be a quality mandala to use for that purpose. Also, you notice it's inherent. There's nothing made up here. This is just simply a heptagon with all its points connection. And, no one is taking creative license to create this, except, in the way I have colored it. But other than that, it's inherent to the heptagon itself. Therefore, it's universal. It's beyond a human invention. Okay, anyone else?
Nope, that's it for now.
Okay, well,
wait a minute. One more.
Sneak in under the wire. This is going to be the last one, folks, because we're running out of time.
Okay, Francis, you had mentioned color, and since you mentioned color, I would think the yellow is mental, the green color is the color of the heart chakra, and the blue is the etheric body, so you have the physical etheric, the heart, and the mind when you're meditating. And then the middle could be the lotus.
It is like a lotus, isn't it, when I'm holding a lotus? Thanks for that. Yeah, that's useful to me. Okay, I'm going to... hey, that was just terrific, guys. That's really good work. I'm going to share my ideas with you now. Figure has both a lower and an upper orientation, as you've been reading for the last 20 minutes. Because of the movement from 4 to 3 points and a center to periphery orientation through its symmetrical radiance. Okay, the 7 groups of 7 different shapes suggest the structure of the cosmic physical plane. The central 50th shape mirrors the shape of the whole, and thus acts both as a seed and as a synthesizing agent. As a seed, its number is 1. As a synthesizing agent, 50. 1 is the number of purpose and will, 50, which reduces to 5, the number of mind. The 5 and 1 form an Ouroboros, for seed and synthesis are ultimately and in truth 1. Thus, as a symbol for the cosmic physical plane, the Web of Athena represents the alpha and omega of phenomenal existence. 51, the sum total and seed divided by 3 is 17. suggesting the three heptagons within the figure, which are each one, yet expressive of 7. These three heptagons within and defining the perimeter of the web of Athena suggest the threefold constitution of a human being. The form or personality aspect suggested by the outer perimeter. The soul aspect is suggested by the reversed heptagon, reversed because it is turned down toward the personality. And finally, the monad or spiritual aspect is represented by the heptagon at the center, the alpha omega of our existence. The radiance of both the monad and the soul is depicted by the 2 stars. The long yellow arms suggest emanations from the monad penetrating the soul and touching the outer form aspect, thus supporting the idea that both the soul and personality are ultimately expressions of the monad. Each of these same long arms suggests a resolution by means of the central heptagon of duality into unity. In fact, the lower 4 arms, sorry, I hit a wrong key and it went somewhere else. Let me get it back here. There we go. There we go. All right, there we go. In fact, the lower 4 arms resolve into the upper 3, thus demonstrating ascension from the fourfold world of duality into the threefold realm of unity. So, when we overlay these 3 illustrations, we have a star that symbolically represents the path from duality to unity. This makes the figure an apt representation of the mental plane, with the central 7-pointed star representing the threshold between the lower 4 and upper 3 subplanes. This is in keeping with the purpose of myth Athena. Here's an overlay of the Parthenon. Though not exact in its geometrical equivalencies, it is nonetheless evocative. We don't have time to go into all the geometry of the Parthenon at this time. This is just to give you a sense of the relationship between the 7-pointed star and the Parthenon. However, the Web of Athena does accurately illustrate 2 types of pyramids, both in an orthogonal view, that just means straight on view, not in perspective, and in perspective. In an accurate depiction, within 1/10 of 1 degree, the sharp or Russian pyramid, whose magical properties we discussed at some length in a previous webinar, is shown both orthogonally, that's the one on the left, and in perspective. With the same 1/10 of a degree accuracy, an orthogonal view of the Great Pyramid of Giza is illustrated by each of the 7 points of both the inner and outer heptagons. So, Martin, we're finally getting to your point about the Great Pyramid. As mentioned before, Athena's title Parthenos, which means virgin, adds to 515, corresponding to the 51.5 degree angle of the Great Pyramid. Additionally, a 3-dimensional illustration of a pyramid is shown 21 times in the Web of Athena. There are 7 each of the illustrated examples. Pyramid means fire in the middle, which seems to be illustrated by the location of the innermost 7-pointed star in relation to the 3-dimensional pyramidal outline. Notice that both the king's and queen's chamber stand inside this star. Now, I didn't tweak the angles in this illustration of the Great Pyramid in any way, and yet you can see how close these angles are to those of the interior lines of the Web of Athena, not only of the pyramid's outline, but also of the ascending and descending passages. Notice that the Queen's chamber stands below the midpoint of the web's inner star, in the region of the lower 4 points, and the King's chamber stands above the midpoint in the region of the three upper points. This becomes of particular interest when we consider the fact that the purpose of Athena's web, which in ancient Egypt was known as the Neith net, was similar, if not identical, to the purpose of the sarcophagus in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid, a magical means by which an acolyte could be lifted from the waters of the lower quaternary into the fiery realm of higher mind. To get a better understanding of this purpose, let's talk a little more about Athena and her Egyptian counterpart, Neith. We've already seen that the numerology of their names suggests that the function of this great transmuting netter is to facilitate the disciples' passage into the three higher subplanes of the mental plane. We also have evidence for this in their respective mythologies. Athena was known as a weaver, Neith as a knitter. Both created what was called a caul, a kind of veil. It is the same veil that HPB refers to in her book titled Isis Unveiled. This veil, also known as the net of Neith, was worn by maidens to mark their virginity. However, after this veil was, quote, lifted, unquote, it was used to carry newborn infants and was also used in funerary rites to facilitate rebirth into the higher realms. Oft quoted by HPB, Gerald Massey, in his groundbreaking work, The Natural Genesis, tells us why. Could we get a reader for this quote from Massey?
Vera, would you like to read for us, please?
Neith also carries the shuttle or knitter of the network. Her name is synonymous with the word net. As knitter or netter, she typifies the mother as the catcher of fish who netted Horus from the water.
Thank you. Massey goes on to say, true being then is figured as an escape by means of the net from out of the waters, a drawing out. The word net also means to draw. And thence a netting as the means of being born, saved, fished out from the drowning element. This, quote, drowning element is the lower quaternary. Thus, when the Christ said, "Be ye fishers of men," he was citing an ancient initiatory tradition, which also took place in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid. Midwives assist infants as they issue forth from the watery world of amniotic fluid. In this way, according to ancient myth, Neith, who became Athena in Greece and Minerva in Rome, draws forth the newly born disciple from the waters of Maya and glamour into the fiery realm of higher mind. Okay, we've determined that the energy of the number 7 dominates the web of Athena, just as it dominates the organization of all units of consciousness in the manifested universe, and that this is somehow connected with the principle of mind. But why? For an answer, we must consider the fact that, according to the secret doctrine, the very first manifestation, the, quote, non-eternal germ, was the synthesis or aggregate of universal wisdom, which was, quote, Oyahohu, the son of the sun, who contains in himself the 7 creative hosts, the Sephiroth, and is thus the essence of manifested wisdom. Note the word essence. Sophia is the feminine and thus manifested principle of wisdom, of which Oyaohu is the essence. HPB says the 7 planetary regions, planetary logi, are the 7 sons of Sophia, wisdom, the true magnificent 7. So, all manifestation was and is conditioned by universal mind. In addition, we have the nature of space itself. the environment for all manifestation. HPP says, space is called in the esoteric symbolism the seven-skinned eternal mother father. It is composed from its undifferentiated to its differentiated surface of 7 layers. Sevenfold space became the environment in which the great sacrifice, for manifestation is always sacrificial, could take place. The Rosicrucians illustrated this cosmic sacrifice with the symbol of the pelican, tearing open its breasts to feed its 7 little ones, each little one being a cosmic principle. These are the 7 creations that Genesis characterizes as days, which describe the regeneration of our solar system. For a more esoteric version of this great event, we must turn to stanza 5, verse 1 of the Secret Doctrine. Quote, the primordial 7, the first 7 breaths of the dragon of wisdom, produce in their turn from their holy circumgyrating breaths the fiery whirlwind. It's not too difficult to imagine this great event being symbolized, even illustrated, by the net of Athena. Okay, let's take a look at the next stage in DK's analysis, which is 4, the stage of the synthetic grasp of the purpose of a symbol, of its place in an ordered manifesting plan, of its true unified intent. This stage is not about attributes, rather it has to do with synthesis and unity, synthetic purpose and unified intent. Just as the first stage of our analysis has to do with the physical plane, the second with the astral, and the third with the mental plane, this stage suggests we apply our intuition and thus lift our consciousness to even higher levels. Notice too that this stage is threefold. The stage of the synthetic grasp of the purpose of a symbol, of its place in an ordered manifesting plan, and of its true unified intent. So, what is the synthetic purpose or unified intent of the Web of Athena, and what is its place in an ordered manifesting plan? What single purpose characterizes this figure? As usual, we're asking questions way beyond any of our capability of answering. But, you know, we're angels fear to tread, right? So any ideas? Take a moment to consider, and you'll just let me know when you get a response. But feel free to take your time. After all, we have, well, actually, we're over already. But take your time for this element. Do we have anyone with an idea as to the synthetic purpose?
Not yet. They're all still thinking.
It's a big question, isn't it?
Here we go. Please go ahead, Trudy.
To me, it's unity.
Mm-hmm.
Unity in diversity.
Yes, I think that's closer to it. Unity and diversity, and the return to unity. That's great, Trudy. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Julie, did you have something you wanted to say?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Order out of chaos.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting how this figure embodies both order and chaos. Chaos, you know, more formally defined as, you know, that which is irregular. And yet we have a great regularity shown here as well. The irregularity mostly in the angles of the figure. Anyone else?
Helen says the mediator.
The mediator, indeed, yes. If we look at the mythology of Athena and Neith, this becomes a magical form by which the acolyte can be, a form for salvation, which the acolyte can be lifted to the next level in its pursuit. Yes. Anyone else?
Era, please go ahead.
You know, I see it growing, transcending itself through and out of its own borders, within its own opposite.
Mm-hmm. You know, this is just one stage of this. We could take this whole thing and reduce it, and in fact, I was going to do this and I just forgot to, and reduce it and put it in the middle so that we'd have it go inward. And if you just extend the lines of the outer heptagon, you know, you get a star, and then you can close those lines, get a new heptagon, and so it expands in both directions. So but you don't need to do that because the potential for that is inherent in this figure by itself. So yeah, it's a very good point. Anyone else?
Go ahead, please, Lona.
I would say also the symbol of balance, balancing the opposites.
Mm.
And,
yes.
Into the word transmutation.
Yeah, and so much of the work of transmutation is the balancing of the opposites, and that's, you know, as Scott was saying about this being, you know, a potency just in and of itself. It's, you know, this could put a quality to that potency, which is, it's something that can help balance those parts of yourself that need balancing. Any other thoughts?
Yes, we have several here, and another hand raised, but hold on just one second. Okay, Anne says, the geometric way the chakras light up in our body on each plane. And then she says, seen from above.
Interesting. Yeah, you know, it's said that when the masters look at us, they just see the geometry and the light that we're able to emanate. And so there's definitely something of the seen from above. In one of the next webinars, I'll be talking about the transition from the 5-pointed star to the 7-pointed star, which is an even higher state of consciousness than that of the 5. I think it happens at the 6th initiation. Anyone else?
Suzanne says, I'm reminded of part of the mantram referring to I, the triangle divine, work out the will within the square. And she says, hence the 7.
Well, remember the segment where we have the idea that the 3-4-3, which is part of the title of the Virgin, is illustrated by the circumference of the square and the circle becoming the same. And that's a form of integration. It's not just transcending on outward to the circle. It's that integrated place, which also speaks to the balance. Anyone else?
Iris, please go ahead.
I've been sensing a relevance to the number 4 based on what's been said about order out of chaos, the 4th ray, and the 3-4-3, and humanity or the plane of mind, all of that.
Well, Well, 4 basically represents one of two things conceptually, which is the prison of materiality. DK calls him the prison of the cube, or the prison of the square. But it also represents the 4th subplane, that middle place, and that's where fourness comes into relationship to this figure.
Yes, it may be the role of humanity.
Yeah, it's the 4th kingdom, and it's ruled by the 4th ray. So, yeah. Other thoughts? Anyone else is able to synthesize the purpose of this symbol?
Martha and Gabriel say manifestation and its source simultaneous.
Yep, that's it. It's right. Yeah. It's a total synthesis. But in synthesis, you have that which is being synthesized, which is, of course, its component parts. These are great observations, people. Anyone else?
Julie says, man into initiation into the soul.
Okay. Well, initiation is 7-fold. So you have a definite pattern connected with the initiatory process here. Not only in the fact that there are just 7 points, but in all that we've been discussing. Because, the DK says that the white magician is fundamentally concerned with the 4th subplane, right? It is mastery of the 4th subplane that moves one into and towards the chamber of initiation, or the passage into higher mind. Other thoughts?
That's all I see.
Okay, well, we're over time, so I'm going to push it along here. Okay, here's my idea as to the synthetic purpose of the Web of Athena. Web of Athena, or the net of Neith, is a 7-fold matrix suggesting the inner and outer constitution of every unit of consciousness, from a cosmic logos to an atom of substance. It is also a magical means of salvation, a matrix of energy used to draw an initiate across some threshold. Because Athena is specifically related to higher mind, this threshold is quite possibly the 4th subplane of the mental plane. For example, to mix metaphors of ancient mythology and theosophy, possibly those who, during initiation, aid the one initiator, together form the net of Neith, drawing the initiate from the waters of the lower quaternary into the matrix of light that is the higher mental plane. For this reason, it is an apt symbol for the functionality of that great netter, Pallas Athena Parthenos. Now, does the actual web look like our figure? At its lowest level of manifestation, very possibly, since its lines and form are inherent to the heptagon. But of course, we have no way of knowing for sure. Okay, the final stage in DK's criteria for analyzing a symbol is identification with the quality and purpose of the symbol as it is illuminated by the mind held steady in the light. This final stage brings into activity the brain as well as the mind, unquote. So, let's attempt to identify with, rather than merely reflect on, the quality and purpose of the Web of Athena. Let's take exactly 1 minute to do this, though I urge all of you to take this figure into your meditation chambers. I think you find it worthy of your efforts. So we'll start that 1 minute starting now. Okay. Okay, well, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed the webinar. During the next section, we'll continue our survey of the number 7 with a look at the 7th ray, the 7th Sephiroth, called Netzach, and the 7th Tarot Arcanum, known as the Chariot. No new reading for this month, unless you want to read the Allegory of the Cave. If you have never read that, it's a fascinating read. It's in the Republic by Plato. I'm sure you can find it online in a minute in PDF version. And if you haven't gotten around to reading the chapters concerning the number 7 in Key to the Universe and A Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe, I think you would find them worthwhile. Okay, among the most profound writings of all time, are the stanzas of Zhang as they appear in The Secret Doctrine. Today we'll use the 7 verses of stanza 1 for our visualization. We'll begin and end with an Om. The eternal parent, wrapped in her ever-invisible robes, had slumbered once again for 7 eternities. Time was not, for it lay asleep in the infinite bosom of duration. Universal mind was not, for there were no ahi to contain it. The 7 ways to bliss were not, the great causes of misery were not, for there was no one to produce and get ensnared by them. Darkness alone filled the boundless all, for Father, Mother, and Son were once more one, and the Son had not awakened yet for the new wheel and his pilgrimage thereon. The 7 sublime lords and the 7 truths had ceased to be, and the universe, the sun of necessity, was immersed in parinishpana, to be outbreathed by that which is, and yet is not was. The causes of existence had been done away with. The visible that was and the invisible that is rested in eternal non-being, the one being. Okay, that's it for today. Don't forget to donate a few bucks to the Moria Federation at moriafederation.com, which will help pay the yearly fee for this GoToMeeting account that makes these webinars possible. Thanks to Brett. These webinars are available on makara.us. You see the HTTP address there on your screen. And thank you, BL, for your continued invaluable assistance. I just really couldn't do this without you. Keep spreading the word, everyone. Tell a friend. Thank you all for attending. Hope to see you again at our next session, which, because of the 7 Ray conference in April, won't be until May 15th. That's a 2-month break. But I'm hoping that you'll all rally back here on the 3rd Sunday of May. And I hope to see some of you at the conference. Okay, bye for now.
Goodbye, everybody.